As we began to get closer, the sound of gunshots and explosions ringing off right and left got louder and louder. I began to hear what sounded like the clashing of steel. As I finally got close enough to start getting a view of what was going on, and it was a complete throwdown. Sylvia and Victor were going at it. Blades and guns everywhere, mixing close and mid and long range combat at rapid pace. It seemed like they were matching each other blow for blow, shot for shot, with no one seeming to take a clear edge. I looked around and honestly I couldn't find that big spectral dog anywhere. I figured I'd notice a big cloud floating about, but there didn't seem to be anything. Just a completely and utterly destroyed field of combat. Craters everywhere. Lots of them still smoking. "Why won't you just go down?" Sylvia shouted as they rushed into each other. Another rapid clashing of her blade against his guns, slashing at him over and over again as he parried off, making strikes of his own. Once again, using those guns like bludgeoning instruments, effective as both hand-to-hand weapons and long-range ones, seamlessly switching in reloads without even looking. At this point, he was still wearing that spectral cloak and hat, having that appearance. I think he called it possession. Full possession, to be specific. It looked pretty damn cool if you ask me. Like he suddenly became a spectral Old West cowboy and was just duking it out with Sylvia as their blades clashed again and they separated for a moment before beginning to dart to the right, moving alongside each other in parallel as they each fired shots back and forth, maneuvering between them but still moving forward and never stopping the fire. "Haunted house!" Victor exclaimed as what looked like a ring of shadowy energy propelled from beneath him, stretching out for hundreds of feet. "Shadow game, 3 of a kind!" he exclaimed as he hurled both of his guns into the air, whirling in the air beside him as he continued to move forward, each one of them seeming to emit a ring of shadow that expanded out, rapidly turning into doppelgangers, complete copies of Victor, right down to the smallest detail, as they all suddenly began to rush Sylvia. As she began trying to fight them off, she found that all of them struck hard and fast. They didn't have weapons. They seemed to use glowing strips of blue energy like brass knuckles, lashing out with punches in Sylvia's direction, which she parried off with her blade. But with 3 of them, she was having a hard time keeping up, even with that rapid darting movement that Rebecca used so well. Darting away for a moment, she said a word, a very short one, before propelling a blast of energy at one of the 3. It apparently was not quick enough to dodge. It impacted hard, and in the moment when I expected there to be an explosion, sending that shadow reeling, suddenly an explosion did ring out, but in the complete wrong place. The explosion hit Sylvia, sending her hurtling backwards, smashing into the ground, bouncing off, as she shook it off and managed to catch herself, digging her blade into the ground to stop her movement. I hate these little asinine games of yours." "Oh, thank you. I do try to be infuriating," all 3 victors announced simultaneously as they took a stance in front of Sylvia, staring her down for a moment. "To this day, I had not yet fought a spiritualist medium. Honestly, if they're all as strong as you, I'm surprised there aren't more of them. Your powers are far more impressive than I would have thought. Based on your heavy metal friend, I wasn't expecting much of you. But you have much more skill than he does. From what I knew about spiritualist mediums like yourself, I knew that you had 3 primary states of spiritual awakening that you could use with your guardian ghosts. However, I also knew that while there is always one that you're particularly best at, the powers between spiritualist mediums can differ drastically, all based on the personality of the spiritualist medium themselves and the ghost. It's taken me a while to pin it down, but I think I've got you about handled, at least in terms of learning your abilities. Practically, your most effective skill is in full possession. You're able to do it next to constantly, regardless of which one of your other abilities you're using. That's your strongest of the 3 skills. I'd say your weakest is the ability to manifest the spirit separately from yourself, as I've hardly seen you do it at all, leaving only the last of the 3 abilities of the spiritual medium, Haunted House, the ability to create a controlled designated space emitted from your primary location, and within that space, control the rules of reality themselves, bend them to your will, force them to abide by rules that fit you better, your style of combat. And I think I've figured most of them out. All of your techniques, each and every one of them is named after a type of hand that you can have in poker, starting at a high card at the lowest and moving up. The more powerful the hand, the more powerful the technique. High card allows you a very short-term boost in speed, strength, and mobility, but it only lasts for a few seconds. A pair allows you to manifest your shadow as a second you. Once again, a very short-term technique, but with much more powerful effects, and the duration is longer than simple high card, meaning in the short term that it's out, you can overwhelm your opponent with numbers, outmaneuver them by being literally in 2 places at once. Then you have that one, 3 of a kind. To be honest, I struggled with it a bit at first, but I figured it out now. It's a dupe. All 3 of you may be physical and able to launch attacks, but only one of you is real and can really be hit. The other 2 are traps. Striking either one of them will result in the impact being channeled to me instead of you, or one of the doppelgangers. Wow, you certainly have an attention for detail. You're figuring out all my best moves. Whatever am I gonna do? Victor replied, smiling, as the 2 shadows beside him dissipated, swirling back into guns that he quickly grabbed as they twirled in air. Don't play me a fool, Sylvia replied, smiling. That's far from the limit. Remember, I've seen that you have stronger techniques. Remember, I've already seen 4 of a kind and flush. The only ones left are straight flush, and royal straight flush, which is the highest hand that you can have in a game of cards. The only question is, what kind of abilities will they yield? To be honest, I find myself quite perplexed. I almost want to not kill you, just so I can see them. But then again, I do like to win, Sylvia said as she gave the blade in her hand a twirl, beginning to take a fighting stance as she stared back at Victor. You go get him, sis, Rebecca called out from beside me, as we stared down at the confrontation. Sylvia looking over to see Rebecca, waving at her joyously beside me. Rebecca? What on earth are you doing? Haven't you beaten him yet? No, sis, I lost. What do you mean you lost? Rebecca, you don't look like you lost. No, I totally lost. I suppose technically I gave up, but that's still technically a loss. Rebecca, you can't just give up. That's not how this works. Remember, they're intruders. We're supposed to beat them senseless, at the least. Please don't tell me that you're letting that destiny nonsense get in your head again. Don't worry about it, sis. Heavy Metal's a nice guy. I'm sure everything will work out just fine. Oh, Sylvia replied, hanging her head in despair. I don't know what I'm going to do with you.